cabin in the woods had been abandoned for years, but one night a candle burning in the window. The light shone on the cottage, revealing its appearance. The wooden frame of the door was covered in clinging cobwebs. Strange liquid dripped from the ceilings onto the dusty floors. The wet, dark hardwood floorboards were shrouded in the middle of the room by a moth-eaten carpet. The walls were dingy, with peeling paint. The harsh environment peeled away the layers one by one to unveil some of the shanty's hidden secrets. However, some layers remained unpeeled and the mysteries remain untold. Ray stumbled on a rotting animal carcass and fell on top of it. "Careful, buddy," Harold said as he helped Ray up. "There could be a snake eating that carcass from the inside," he added. Ray quickly jumped away from the bloody pile of meat to the delight of Rudy, who was closely following from behind. "Still the old scaredy cat, I see," Harold tapped Ray on the shoulder while smiling condescendingly. The three are members of a mountaineering group called the Apo Hiking Society. They are lost when they made a wrong turn deep inside the forest. Luckily, they left two of their female members on the base camp. Without saying it, all of them are relieved that the girls are not with them, because that's less person to worry about. They were feeling their way back to base camp when they came across the dilapidated cottage. All of them are not surprised to see an abandoned cabin in the woods. After all, the map that they brought is inaccurate and is the reason why they are lost. "There must be someone there since there's a candle burning in the window," Ray pointed at the candle. "Yeah, maybe we could find help there," Harold said as he stepped over the carcass. Rudy nodded. When they were close to the cabin, they could smell the stench of blood that accompanied the moldy odor. A fierce wind blew the candle, and the cottage became as dark as a coffin. There was a deathly silence that was deafening. Critters like toads, bugs, and birds were eerily silent. A faint snarl came from a crack in the wall which prompted the three to stop in their tracks. Ray was the nearest to the cabin. He motioned everyone to back off as he felt the claw marks in the rough wood. He was unsettled by the fact that whoever or whatever made this claw mark could be inside. He was on this thought when a sudden feeling of ecstasy overwhelmed him. It is as if he had an unquenchable urge to go inside the cabin. He held his head with his right hand and struggled to keep his balance. To keep upright, he was about to put his left hand on the door. At that point, somehow he knew that once he touched the door, it would result in his brutal end. He's not sure where he got that knowledge from, but he's certain of that. Yet despite knowing this, he couldn't resist it. He extended his hand towards the door, inching his way toward his death. That is until Harold stopped his hand from touching the door. He looked at Ray and shook his head. "Let's go back," Harold increased the pressure in his grip. "Let go of his hand," Rudy complained. "We're here to get some help and that help is inside." Ray looked at Harold. "Let go," Ray was adamant. The moment Harold stopped preventing Ray from opening the door, Ray immediately pushed the door. At that same instant, dark human-like hands with very long nails grabbed Ray, pulling him inside. The door immediately shut. Harold fell to the ground in surprise. He stayed there not knowing what to do or what just happened. After finally realizing what just happened, Rudy and Harold bolted, not looking back. They were feeling guilty for not trying to help Ray, but the overwhelming sense of dread was just too much for them to bear. The fog was heavy on top while the ground was wet below, and all sense of the world had vanished. It was difficult to tell where they were headed and where they would arrive as they ran deeper into the woods. Their hearts were racing with fear, but there was no turning back. They had no choice but to continue. Rudy and Harold pressed forward, gasping for air. The track seemed to go on forever. There were no other options. They have to find their way back to the other members of their hiking group and get help for Ray. For hours, Ethel and Eileen have been looking for Rudy, Ray, and Harold. They've lost hope, and anxiety has taken over. They decided to return to their camping base and check if their friends were already there. Not long after they turned back when they heard footsteps running beyond the foliage. They looked in that direction hoping that those were their missing group mates. Harold and Rudy had been running continuously without stopping for a long time. They were breathing heavily in their mouth, soaking wet from the dew in the foliage, and were brokenhearted that they didn't help their friend Ray. They were about to give up when they chanced upon their female companions. Eileen and Ethel were surprised when Harold and Rudy suddenly appeared running toward them. Rudy collapsed to the ground while Harold dropped to his knees, panting heavily. Harold pointed in the direction of the abandoned cabin but he wasn't able to speak. "What happened? Where is Ray?" Eileen asked. Ethel hurriedly came to Rudy's side to check on him and was relieved when she realized that he was fine. Eileen gave them water to drink while Ethel asked for Ray's whereabouts for the second time. Rudy looked at Harold, who also looked at him and nodded. "Someone grabbed Ray in an abandoned cabin." Rudy pointed in the direction of the cabin as he drank some water. "How did it happen?" Eileen inquired. "Did you hear what I said? Someone grabbed him, he's inside with who or whatever it was." Rudy's voice was trembling with anxiety. "There is a hellish cabin in this forest, with a creepy creature," Harold exclaimed. "What are you talking about, guys?" Eileen wondered if they might be just hallucinating since they were tired because they were gone for many hours. Ethel insisted that they go and get Ray back. "That abandoned cabin may have been inhabited by demons," Rudy remarked. "We don't know that," Harold shot back at Rudy. "She's right, we need to go back and look for Ray." Harold slowly stood up. "That's the right thing to do." Rudy requested some rest and asked Harold to seek assistance first from the authorities. Ethel swiftly responded that they had previously called the forest rangers for assistance, but there was a landslide. "They are unreachable for the time being. We are not waiting any longer, we have to save Ray." Harold was determined. "Stay here if you don't want to come with me." Rudy went back to their tent, looked for his jungle knife, and grabbed a piece of pointed wood from the ground. Harold took the wood from him and nodded and asked the ladies to follow him. "Let's go and save Ray," he declared as he walked away. They walked for a long time in the direction of the abandoned cabin. By sheer luck or fate, they easily found the cabin. Somehow, Harold knew it was not coincidental that they saw the cabin again. Something supernatural could have been at work here. Something bad was waiting to happen. He held the pointed wood while his hands were shaking. A massive black bird swooped through the sky, hovering over the cabin and entering its crumbling roof. Although it vanished from their sight, the squeaking sound it made seemed to warn them that there was danger inside. It may have been the other way around. The blackbird screeched to alert the inhabitants of the cabin that there were people outside. The squawking was repeated and did not stop. Rudy and Harold looked at each other when they saw that the candle in the window was once again lit. Rudy nodded to Harold, who held the wood that he picked up earlier in both hands. Eileen and Ethel closely followed them, holding each other's hands. Harold noticed that the door was left open, so he signaled to the group that they were going to enter the cabin. He pointed their flashlight at the walls, anticipating seeing Ray. There was only a small square mirror hanging there, slightly crooked. It mirrored their flashlight's light, creating a gentle ray of light that hit the wall. The rainbow's colors danced together on the surface before merging into a jumbled mess. On the ledge, a kid's rag doll sat, her lifeless glass eyes fixed on the darkness of the door. Its color was almost charcoal black. The rag doll seemed smiling and welcoming them. Rudy spotted the doll and stepped backwards since the doll's uncanny details gave him the creeps. He took Eileen's hand in his. In reply, the terrified woman gripped his arm. Harold flashed his lights on the floor, hoping to find Ray, but he was not there. The carpet in the center of the room was also removed, and it appeared that the floor had been wiped with it, but stains of blood were evident. They covered their nose due to the foul odor as they explored the cabin. They noticed a wooden rocking armchair inside that moved slightly when Ethel went near it. Eileen warned her not to touch anything. Ethel believed she did not touch it, and it moved on its own, but she just shrugged her shoulders and did not say anything. The presence of the chair indicated that the abandoned cottage had been occupied. Because there was a black candle on the metal table, it had to be a human. The melted wax on the table also indicates that the inhabitant has been there for a long period. Rudy's knee was injured when one of the hardwood floorings cracked open, leading him to fall. He screamed in pain, and Eileen assisted him to stand up when they overheard a thumping noise in the ceiling. The flowing fluids on the ceiling formed some strange words that appeared to be a warning. Dämon ist hier, it reads. It was a German term that meant the demon is here, Ethel translated it since she knows how to speak German. She speaks Spanish, French, and German as a language major. But she has no idea why the warning was written in German. She tried to tell others what it meant, but her voice faded out. She could not speak any words. Before the other could react, the thumping noise made the walls quiver, scaring them, but it eventually ceased. A hissing sound followed, which they interpreted as the presence of a gigantic and venomous snake. Harold told them to have their jungle knives ready in case they were attacked. The hissing sound grew fainter, it appeared that the snake fled. They dashed to an adjacent room. When Harold opened the door to the room, it fell and slammed to the floor. They were taken aback when they discovered skulls inside the chamber. There must have been a dozen of them. They all gasped when they saw that Ray's decapitated head was among them. Rudy was so afraid that he bumped into the wall. The drooping wall collapsed and revealed some skeletons hidden. They all screamed in fear. Pandemonium ensued. Harold tried hard to retain his composure, but the terror got the best of him. He runs towards the door, not caring about the safety of his companions. Unfortunately for him, the door is bolted shut and there's no escape. Rudy, on the other hand, pulled Eileen to his side and started ripping her clothes. His eyes were crimson red and his gaze was that of a madman. Eileen was likewise in a trance-like state. Her eyes were all white and were not responding to what was happening around her. Ethel found broken glass on the floor and proceeded to cut her wrists multiple times. Each cut is deeper than the previous cut. She grinned as her blood oozed from her wounds onto the floor. The forest was filled with the wailing of the damned. Then came death.